We are very, very fortunate today to welcome into our studio the lovely Josie Tucker. Well, she's an ex-Kids Helpline counsellor and now working in a more supportive role doing training for Kids Helpline.
People who are asking for help because they need it. Situations can get pretty hairy pretty quickly.
I could imagine.
If we can make one part of their day easier, one decision easier, or to allow them to feel supported, then that's all the work that we really need to see out of it.
TradeMutt Radio, coming through on your wireless.
Salty sounds.
How's your set?
Yeah, I'm set. I'm ready to go.
How's your volume, Josie?
Divine, real good.
Divine. Well, that's good
Dulcet
because
tones.
I think this is going to be a divine podcast.
It's going to be a divine podcast.
We are very, very fortunate today to welcome into our studio the lovely Josie Tucker, who we're about to find out a lot more about. But to give you a little insight, she has once surfed down a volcano in Costa Rica. Want to find out about that? Spent some time in Jakarta working for the Coalition of Truth and Justice. So there's going to be no lies in this podcast. And currently, well, she's an ex-Kids Helpline counsellor and now working in a more supportive role doing training for Kids Helpline. So, Josie, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And your old man, Johnny, reached out on LinkedIn, another LinkedIn connection, because we did a shout out the other day looking for some more guests, and he said, my daughter is going to be a perfect guest. I said, no worries, Johnny, let's make it happen. If no one knows who John Tucker is, he is working for TAFE out at Acacia Ridge. Absolute champion bloke.
Excellent.
And a big supporter of what we do. So I appreciate him making this introduction, allowing us to do this today. And thanks for your time. Monday morning, by the way, 8:30. So it's not the greatest time to be doing a podcast, but hey, we're going for it. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, surely now that we've got Josie Tucker in here, Big John's going to get TradeMutt shirts on everyone in TAFE,
100%.
Australia-wide, right?
Full rollout.
Yeah, come on, Johnny, mate. Pull your finger out.
That's actually
Let's
what
go.
this conversation is about.
100%.
We're trying to find out how we can find out more about your old boy and butter his bread a little bit. So we can
So I can butter ours. No, it's great. And yeah, when he said Kids Helpline, it was like a light bulb moment because I was like, why have we never thought of reaching out and getting someone from Kids Helpline on here? Because, well, it's an institution. I mean, I was looking up this morning doing a bit of pre-podcast research and, I didn't realise how old it was. It's 91, so it's older than you and I. Not quite as old as you. Oh, are you a 91 model? 90. You're a 90 model.
No, I was breastfeeding at that time.
You're 89 model.
I'm an 89 drop.
There you go. So it's
you-
been around a while.
It has been around a while.
30 this year.
Yeah, okay.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Kids Helpline.
Tell us about surfing down a volcano, though.
It was not as fun as it sounds. It was very dangerous.
Was it active?
Yeah. So you walk up to the top, walk around the crater, smoke, all that kind of stuff. And then they give you a board and you just cruise down. You get there's a dude at the bottom with a speedometer. You get a reading.
What was your reading?
Yeah.
Not that high. Some dude came screaming down in the 60s. And I reckon I was like top 20s.
That's like do some pretty serious injuries.
Yeah. And it's gravel. So
And
sizable hand rippage.
Did you have
Sizable.
Did you have like the
rippage.
knee pads and the elbow pads?
No,
and
no.
the
helmet?
Shorts and t-shirt.
Helmet?
Nah.
Just upper.
Yeah.
Did you sit or did you lay down?
It was a sit. I think face first would have been
Oh, like skeleton.
We used to
Really
do that.
problematic.
We used to do that in Toowoomba Prep because we had like Queenie's paddock and yeah, it was super steep. And we used to do the old head first on the. We had like a max track, massive wheels on these skateboards, and we used to head first down there. It was pretty how you going.
It's probably nice reflecting on like travel stories and surfing down Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Especially
Remember
at the
the world?
moment. Yeah. When you used to be able to go other places.
Yeah.
Oh well.
One
So wait, how long ago was that?
Ooh, 5 years?
Oh, righto.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was part of a much larger trip around
Absolutely.
South America.
Great times had by all.
Great times.
And so you also worked in Jakarta.
I did.
Was that after surfing volcanoes or?
After, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Same trip though. Same trip.
No, different trip.
Okay.
Different trip.
So you're
back out again.
You're a traveller.
I am. Well, I was.
You
Recovering
were.
traveller.
Yeah, recovering. Yeah.
I'm in remission.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Most
right.
are.
So how did you end up falling into this line of work? Because you're actually a social worker. That's what you've studied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you define what a social worker is? Because I think I've got a vague idea of what it is, but I
They
definitely don't.
They
know
work on
exactly.
socialising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of chats.
Okay.
It's a very broad industry. Fundamentally, it's kind of a support worker of some capacity. So a lot of social workers work in public services like child protection, and they essentially look not just at counselling or not just at psychology or management of emotion, but they look at the overall picture of a person.
Okay.
So it's one of the things that helps sort of describe it is other industries go straight for the source of the issue. So they put out the fire, and social workers sort of look for where the fire started. It's a little bit larger.
Oh, okay.
Focus sometimes, so it's
Okay.
like a case management kind of thing. So we look at what are all the things that are happening.
Why
and how can we
did
support?
this happen, and how can we
Yeah.
nip it in the bud? Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Then it must take into account things like, like socioeconomic status,
all that kind of stuff.
communities,
Yeah, it'd be quite a variety of things that you
Yeah.
have to look into.
Yeah.
ethnic backgrounds, like all of this kind of stuff, right?
All that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
So you must see a lot. I actually know a couple of social workers working in, having to take kids out of, disadvantaged or traumatic, dangerous environments. And I just, wow, that must just be so hard. And that would just be one thing on the spectrum of things that you deal with.
One part of the job. And often we're working in industries that are pretty tough and with communities that are really having a hard go of it at that time. But there's lots of good work that can be done and lots of people who need a hand.
Well, I mean, and we're fortunate to have people out there who care enough to want to get involved in that kind of stuff because it's crucial. And I suppose you are helping alleviate, big problems in society that, where people may not be able to help themselves. You can support those people and help them onto a clearer pathway, I guess.
Hope so.
That's cool. So how did you end up in Jakarta?
I was there doing some work for my final part of my degree. Just rolled into this organisation called the Coalition of Truth and Justice.
I just rocked up.
Just showed up. They were like,
I'm here to tell the truth and find some fucking justice.
That's
alright?
it. Help us out.
I was in Bali and
Yeah. So what do they do at the Institute of Truth and Justice?
They do a lot of different things.
Coalition.
Coalition.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Culmination of people collating together.
Absolutely. They're a human rights agency and they do lots of different things. Indonesia is a very complex environment, lots of political stuff, lots of historical issues. It's got quite a lot of parallels with Australian history as well.
Okay.
They just would jump into different projects and look at empowering different groups in society or giving a voice to people who'd been historically sort of really pushed down. Indonesia's way bigger than I knew. It's like 1,000 islands banded together.
Okay.
Which means that there's lots of people from lots of different places.
So how do they pick what they're going to do there in regards to which issues are they? Are people coming to them with issues? Or are they going, hey, there's issues over here, let's go work on that. There's an issue over there. Okay.
Bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, right. What were you working on there?
We were putting together a report that went to the Indonesian Parliament that was based on a model of reconciliation.
Okay.
So, it was sort of based on the Australian view and model of reconciliation and active reconciliation with Indigenous people and with disadvantaged people.
So did the Brits go in there too, did they? I'm not very clued up in my history.
The
Dutch, okay.
Dutch were in there. There was Chinese government in there for a while. It's a bit of everything.
Surprising they're not still there. They sort of cling on.
The Dutch were pretty crafty.
They were
very
got
crafty.
around.
They did get around
They
early.
really did.
Early on,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, they were here. They were like, nah, there's nothing going
Not a
on. They said
fan.
it's desolate. And
Too hot.
Yeah, nah, piss off. Cookie was like, this looks all right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's pretty cool. So you were over there for a year
Yeah.
and you must have met a whole lot of people and you must have been sort of enlightened to a whole bunch of topics and things that you may not have already been.
Completely.
Yep. And then so a year over there, back to Australia, back to Brisbane.
Mm-hmm.
You're originally from Brisbane, right?
I am.
So how do you sort of go from there and start to figure out where you want to actually sort of target yourself in the social work world?
Yeah, because it's such a broad industry. It's
Yeah.
really hard to know sort of which direction to go in. So I did a bit of time in hospitals, a bit of time in maternity hospitals in particular. And
That'd be
then-
tough in there. Because there's so much
highs and
highs and
lows.
such lows.
Completely. With real variation, but super great experience. And then I worked in aged care for a bit.
Also tough.
Also tough, but looking at keeping people independently and happily living in their homes safely. So we did a program rollout with that. And then Kids Helpline just sort of accidentally came my way. The ad came up and I was like, that'll do.
Made sense.
That'll do. Yeah. So run us through. So you've been at Kids Helpline for 4 years.
Yeah.
So run us through Kids Helpline. It's something that's, as we were saying, it's like 30 years old. It's something that I've never had anything to do with.
Yeah.
And I actually haven't, from memory, I don't know of anyone that has used it either.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are people that I know that have. But run us through it. Like, what is Kids Helpline? What does it do?
So it is Australia's only dedicated free counselling support service for 5 to 25-year-olds.
Okay.
It's completely open to anyone within that age range to talk about whatever. There are, of course, other services who work with those age groups, but often they might have sort of a certain issue or a certain group or a certain type of person that they work with. We are anyone within that age group and anything that they would like to talk about. The service is entirely staffed by qualified, trained counsellors, social workers, psychologists, human service workers. So that makes a difference as well in regards to the quality of service that we provide, is everyone is skilled and qualified and educated in the field. 5 to 25 means we talk about everything.
Yeah, I was about to say.
You would get such a range of
range.
things. Yeah, because, I mean, developmentally, there's, 5-year-olds, their perception and the way they see things and the things that are issues to them are way, way, way
Well, how many
different
5-year-olds are calling?
Not a stack, admittedly not a stack, but those who really need it do tend to find their way.
So it's like how many do you reckon? Like ballparking, like 5-year-olds are calling.
Oh, I don't know.
Be hard to, but
I have no clue.
No, that's all right. I'm just thinking because like I know, like obviously I've got nephews and I'm like, I'd be very impressed if they were able to know how to get through there. So obviously it's just awareness at schools and stuff like that, right?
And often they've got a supportive adult with them.
Okay.
So often they'll, have a parent or a school counsellor or someone in their life who is going, let's give these people a ring, let's have a chat together.
But I'd also imagine that, any sort of 5-year-olds that you got ringing in off their own back, they might see an ad on TV or something and then you could get anything from like,
just a
I've
general
got nothing
chat
for dinner, or like there's nothing for dinner, or like how do I order a pizza, or
and some
something
kids call up for good news stories, like they want to tell us about their first day at school.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And we have this other program called Kids Helpline at school. So we have counsellors joining classrooms virtually. So they get to talk to 30 kids at one time. And that's where we tend to cover our youngest group as well, is we're talking to them early about resilience and emotional safety and how to ask for help and what to do if you feel unsafe.
Is that a new thing? Is that only just...
It's been around quite a few years now.
Okay.
And that's how we get that mass. Like we talk to tens of thousands of kids a year.
Yeah, okay.
way.
So you've just got a crew of trained counsellors that are going out and doing those school type visits and sort of bringing people into the funnel.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum as well, I would think, because you see this in the prison system as well, how... Once your class is an adult, it's 18, is it right? Yeah, like officially an adult. But what 18 looks like from one person to the next could be
very different,
significantly different, like developmentally, physiologically.
Completely.
And so you have a whole range of individuals who are just not prepared for adulthood, who haven't been supported into adulthood and can't even deal with the expectations and the pressures of that kind of stuff. And all I can relate to is seeing those prison shows where like a young kid who still looks like a 15 or a 16-year-old gets thrown into a high security prison and treated, and there's no like, there's no
transition.
there's no transition. There's no like, nah, that's you now. Like, suck it up.
Yeah, and our service actually used to go to 18. 18 was the upper limit. That's what most youth services are funded for. And we realised that people don't have support in those early adult years. Some people call it year 13, which is that first year out of high school, is people just don't know what to do, who they are, who they should surround themselves with, what they're supposed to be doing. And so we bumped up to 25 because there's a lot of work to be done there.
And like I saw on the website, it's sort of broken down into it's 4 groups really. It's 5 to 12 is kids, 13 to 17 teens, and then 18 to 25 is young adults. And you've also got parents.
Yeah.
So like I would assume that with those 4 groups of people, there would be sort of varying things that are like the key topics or issues that people are calling up about. Definitely. So like what are the 5 to 12-year-old kids, what's the main sort of things that they're calling in about?
For them, it tends to be the people around them that they want to talk about. Family, the relationships in their lives, their friends. You'll tend to see bullying appear as a trend.
Yep.
There as well. And also the 5 to 12s, probably the upper end of those, are beginning to notice how they feel about certain things, how they learn, how they process things. what feels right for them, what doesn't. So sometimes you see some emerging discussions around mental health or just emotions in general.
Okay.
But for the most part, it's about the people around them.
Yep. Okay.
That's what they're having a chat about.
Yeah. And then teens, I assume, is sort of more. It'd be the same sort of thing, but also like stress and anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Coming into those later
With the
years.
teens, we go in.
Yeah.
So it's about who am I? How do I fit with people? How do I feel around these people?
Identity, sexuality,
Yeah.
all this stuff that starts to come through.
All of that, absolutely.
Heavy stuff, like hectic stuff to navigate.
And really big conversations. So conversations like that we talk about as like self-concept. Who am I? How do I fit with the world around me? How do I view them? How do they view me? And those are massive conversations that a lot of people are left to navigate alone.
Mm.
And that's where I think a great part of our service comes in, which is let's just bounce some ideas around and see what feels right, particularly around identity and sexuality, which is, well, let's talk about all the thoughts going through your head and then we'll figure out, you know, together and in growing through that conversation what feels right. Because most people are just processing inside. It makes no sense without being able to bounce it out.
Yeah, and it's so volatile, such a volatile time, because when emotionally you're trying to navigate those types of topics, like it comes out at the surface level where you have to decide what clothes you want to wear. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like how like everything that you're experiencing and going through actually translates to your physical appearance to the world.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine how hard that must be? And particularly for people who come from potentially, you know, disadvantaged backgrounds. Who can't even afford to, you know, reflect themselves, you know, project themselves to the world the way they'd like to.
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing about our service as well is we're national. So we talk to young people from all over Australia. So sometimes we're talking to people in really remote communities or really disadvantaged communities, and they have, you know, ideas about how they want to reflect themselves and identify, but they don't have that available to them. Or they don't have services available to them in their local town. Sometimes you'll be chatting and you go, oh, let's have a look at, you know, maybe some counselling support services, or let's see if there's a headspace. And you just look and it's hundreds of kilometres before you find a doctor, let alone someone who can support, you know, complex conversations like that.
In my observation, I really feel like this whole concept of identity is one of the most overarching kind of topics in the entire mental health space and developmental space. It's just identity, like who you are to yourself, who you are to the rest of the world, and then how that defines where you position yourself. And,
Definitely.
And then what you do and what behaviours you portray, you know.
And we don't give it enough credit as a conversation. Something that when I was working as a Kids Helpline counsellor, and I still hear it now when I come across the work of other people, is you hear young people just cutting themselves down and their own needs. They're like, I'm sure you've got more important people to talk to, or I'm sure other people have it worse than me. And it's this assumption that unless things are really bad, unless this is the worst thing I could think of, I'm not worthy of having this discussion.
Yeah, but that's why,
common misconception with any helpline.
I agree. But it's sort of how we change that perception and that understanding for people to say, hey, look, we all need to be, because it was you that talked about Lifeline, hey, and you were like, a crisis could be from fucking is the definition. A crisis is defined by the individual, right?
Yeah. So since starting TradeMutt, we've obviously learned a lot about this space, and like the crisis support services was kind of the first thing we learned about, and the fact that, you know, they are crisis support services, but what a crisis is to one person is not comparable to what it is
to someone else,
to another person. It could be anything from, you know, a really traumatic experience or suicidal, you know, ideation to going through a whole lot of pressure and struggles, and then dropping the eggs when you get home, and that being the snapping point. That's just like,
but I think the definition of someone knowing whether or not to call is the thought that they think they should call in the first place.
That's it,
right? Yeah. So I was like, I don't know whether or not I should call. Well, call. Is that right?
Agree.
You know what I mean? It's like if you've got the thought, fucking just do it.
Completely. And often I talk to young people about that. If it's on your mind, then it's important. There's no reason to wait and to hold it. And sometimes people do, and then that means that crisis point comes quicker, or that they're holding until they hit crisis point.
Yeah.
It's like, but your brain was telling you ahead of time that this didn't feel right. I didn't feel cool about that. I want to have a chat about this. And listening to that instinct is super important.
I've just written that down because that is such fucking... I've never heard anyone say that. If it's on your mind, it's important.
It's there for a reason.
That is so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's got to be
Put that on the bloody front door.
That's it.
But this is the thing. How many people, and not to digress from Kids Helpline, but how many people would have stuff on their mind that they just let circulate over and over again and don't act on it.
That's it.
But it's important. Fuck, I really like that.
And this is
I do. I think that's so.
No, it is. It's great.
That sums the whole thing up, doesn't it?
And often
It validates.
It does. It validates that need, and most people are really resistant to ask for help from formal supports. So formal supports being services, services like ours or services like a doctor or a psychologist, because they think that their need isn't that important. And often we tolerate things for too long. And most people are used to having conversations with trusted people in their lives. They talk to their friends, they talk to their family, they talk to trusted people of some variety, school, work, whatever. But where counselling comes in is it gives you someone outside of your bubble. It gives you someone that has absolutely no vested interest on, should I break up with this person? Should I do this? Should I go to uni? Should I cut that person out of my life? What should I do in this? And most people in your life have an opinion, or have a bit of insider information that they may knowingly or not be influencing that conversation with. But when you get a counsellor, you get a completely clean slate. I don't know any of these people you're talking about. I don't know you that well either. So I get to hear your whole story start to finish, and you get to tell it. I don't get to colour it in a direction that I want to. And that's often where young people will notice that counselling is really helpful, when they get to go, oh, I just got to own that space just for me. It wasn't about sharing this or navigating it with the opinion of someone else.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, is because when you go and talk to a mate about an issue or something like that, they would already have a fair understanding of the issue you're talking about, or know people that are involved, and it'll be giving you obviously the opinion from their side.
Yeah.
Rather than just a completely clean slate. Hey, righto. Well, if that's how you see it, well, let's just unpack it. Yeah. Which is, again, I haven't heard it described like that, but it is so true. It is so true.
How important do you reckon that is, actually, to have someone who is completely impartial, who you can go to? Because, we do exist in our own little echo chambers, in our own little worlds.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, that's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes. And, sometimes there are issues that you will want to take to a mate, or you will want to take to your family because you need that perspective, or you want their opinion. And that's fine. But sometimes there are conversations that can be helpful to have within just your realm and to present. And often you'll find when you're talking with supportive people is they want to support you.
Yeah.
And they're going, yeah, I know that bit. I know, yep, all good. You don't have to cover that again. And they're sort of jumping ahead sometimes, or people want to protect us from the things that might hurt us or harm us. So particularly around identity it's really important for young people and all people really to be able to unpack the things that they feel sure about and things they don't feel sure about. And sometimes people want to protect us from the things we don't feel sure about. It's like, oh no, that's fine. That's normal. That's completely okay. Or no, you're not like that. No, you're the best person ever. And they're kind of protecting us from the words that we want to kind of explore and unpack and understand a bit more.
Yeah.
And that means that depth of conversation is different. Versus when you get a counsellor, you get to just throw it all out on the table and just sift through it and figure out what's useful.
And I also think it's based on the fact that this person, you have got no idea who it is. You can't see him. Yeah. You're just talking to them. I'm trying to think what the Joe Rogan podcast was with that guy that hitchhiked around. Is the Asian fella? Did you hear that one?
It's
David Chong.
David Cho.
Yeah,
who's was given shares from Facebook when he painted a mural in their Facebook headquarters, and now he's just squilling there.
Fucking brained it. But he hitchhiked around America for years, right? When he was 17, 18, he and a mate. Anyway, he was talking about how in majority of the car trips he would take, hitchhiking, the first hour is just all the bullshit, weather, sport, news, fuck whatever. And he was like, as soon as it was sort of indicated that the trip was coming to an end, the last 10, 15 minutes was just like fucking just Let's go. Opening the briefcase and being like, right, like he's like people confessing murders, fucking incest, fucking depression, fucking like all of this shit. And he was like, the reason was because he knew, like these people knew that they'd never see me again, and just wanted a sounding board to fucking unload all this shit. Completely. And I was like,
and a car is a good place to do that.
Yeah,
because you're not looking at them.
Yeah, and that it's a very similar thing when you talk with someone over the phone. So Kids Helpline works in 3 key ways. So phone is the major one that people know us for. We also do web chat and we also do email.
Yeah, email.
Yeah.
So I was like,
shoot us an email.
I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, what would the average amount of emails be in a chain?
Oh,
not to put
like
you on the spot static, for a stat, but like
not a heap. Like often people will just send us the one.
Okay.
And then we'll respond back, and then that's kind of it.
As in, like, this is an issue.
Here's what's going on.
Yeah, okay.
And
That's
I think
interesting.
for a lot of people, what that actually is, because email is one of those things that sort of has its limitations. Like, we can't talk about quite as many things as we could if we were just chatting.
You can't quite pick up on tone. You can't quite pick up on...
a lot of things that are missing. But what it does do is it kind of lets people journal, really, is you got to write things down,
which
give it a read,
which does its own
shoot
thing.
it through.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and sometimes, particularly, a lot of people prefer to read the words of someone else because you can read it a couple of times.
Okay.
Whereas if we're having conversation, you say something really poignant and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I can't hear it again. Like,
True.
I'm still processing what you've said and how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Versus if you've written it down, I can go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
sometimes people really prefer that, and it sort of serves this like journaling sort of processing thing.
Yep.
But the best thing about there's those 3 ways of contacting, but none of them involve having to sit in front of someone and tell them, how I'm feeling or to feel really vulnerable
Face to
about
face.
that.
What? Yeah.
So how does the web chat work? Is that just a live chat?
Yeah, instant
online,
messaging.
not
Like
no
WhatsApp
camera.
or something, yeah.
No camera.
Yeah,
So just
cool.
all text.
So what's the average length of time for a call?
I think
Do you
it's
think?
currently sitting around 40 minutes or so.
We're not gonna hold you against.
No,
it if you get
we're not.
any-
Yeah,
All the stats will be like, I don't know.
yeah, media watch fact checking.
Yeah.
No,
I did do a quick search before I left the office on Friday.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I think it's about 40 minutes.
That's interesting.
So the way that our phone calls run, when someone gives us a ring, is we go, hey, we've got up to 50 minutes to chat today. About 50 minutes is where the sweet spot is for a counselling call. That sounds like a long time. For a 5-year-old, that's going to be an eternity. So they tend to stick around a little less, so the younger groups. But when we're moving into our late teens, early 20s, is 50 minutes is a really good opportunity to have a chat, unpack, have a bit of a plan, and then think about what we're going to do next.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is that like the next steps? Because like you were saying off air that only about 60% of calls are able to be taken just because of the sheer volume.
Yeah.
So what is the ability of like down the track, or is it sort of like we've chatted now, these are some resources, go out, good luck?
Yeah.
Because you can't come back to that same person, right?
You can.
Oh, you can?
You can.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's another really a different thing about us in comparison to other helplines.
Yeah.
Other helplines are sort of just really churning through, and they're much bigger operations than ours. And that means that you just talk to who you get through to.
Okay.
For us, you are able to request the same counsellor back.
Okay, how good's that?
And you can also choose the gender of your counsellor, and can set up an arrangement to continue to reconnect, which makes such a difference if you're unpacking some complex stuff.
How many counsellors do you have?
Sitting at about 200.
Okay, and how does it work?
What's the breakdown bit of male and female?
This is the difficulty. If you know any good male people in
Yeah.
the allied health industry, we need more male counsellors.
Yeah, no, well, we're in the same
Yeah.
boat.
I hear they.
Yeah, which is why is that? I don't know.
Well, it's I think it's just because women are more naturally empathetic and right. It's like the Jordan Peterson thing to
It's
a
just-
degree. It's sort of like
Yeah,
as
it's
much
not
as
an
people hate
industry
that.
men are drawn into or supported into as well, which is a real shame because when you hear conversations occurring between male counsellors and male clients, and not to say that it's that easy of a dynamic, but there can tend to be just a really easy ability to jump straight in or to discuss things that perhaps they may not want to disclose to a female counsellor.
Yeah.
So it can be really powerful. So send
We've
them
got
our way.
we've got two male psychs. We've got Julian and who's the other guy? He's in Rockhampton, isn't he?
Oh God, this doesn't sound good.
I've forgotten his name.
Poor dude.
If you,
No, it's I can't remember.
yeah, we can edit that in. We'll just do it in post.
Yeah,
DK.
it'll be like, oh, what's the name of that cancel?
Brian. No, but yeah, we're really fortunate to have those guys. And I mean, yeah, I don't. It's the male in allied health. Yeah, it's not something you see a great deal of.
Difficult thing. We don't get as many phone calls from young men as we would like to.
That was the other thing I was going to
Yeah.
ask. What the breakdown is for demographic and what the
Yeah.
average sort of age is that's coming through. Like, is there a sweet
Yeah.
sort of spot?
There is. Our 13 to 18-year-olds tend to be our the most volume
Okay.
of phone calls. Having said that, our older age range, the 19s to 25s, tend to be the ones who reconnect.
Yep.
So they tend to
Okay.
be the ones who are wanting to do a bit more of that.
They want to
ongoing
work on it. Yeah.
And usually what that means at a really simple level, it kind of cheats the full story. But your 13 to 18s are more likely to have emerging stuff going on. So they're the ones who are noticing the things happening as we're approaching crisis. I don't like how that person talks to me. I don't like how I feel in this situation. I'm not sure how I feel about what's happening around me or who I am within it. And then your 19 to 25s are more likely to have sort of ridden that wave, and maybe they're seeing early emerging mental health conditions or maybe a bit more severe in a certain.
And is there a certain thing that keeps popping up? Like, is it people comparing themselves to someone else? Is it like social media bullying? Is it like, is there some sort of topic that everyone in the office at Kids Helpline are like, fuck, we're getting a lot of calls about this issue?
COVID was the one.
Was the one, yeah. Of course.
But I think it's just, mental health and emotional well-being, and just going.
It's just like anxiety, depression, what's going on here, just navigating that.
I would have to think it's largely identity.
And that's all connected to identity, isn't it?
Okay.
Because what I, before I go down that identity path, I'm interested to know, like, I don't know if you know at all, but the propensity for an individual to seek further help as they grow after having sought help at an early age. Yeah. Is this something that you are able to identify?
Great question.
Compare?
It's a very good question. And the word propensity is very impressive for 9:30 on a Monday morning.
Yeah, I'll need a dictionary though.
After the weekend I've had.
It's a goodie. Look, I don't know about concrete evidence on that, but if you're able to ask for help, to communicate what's happening and to articulate what's happening inside your head, you are more likely to get a benefit, and then you're more likely probably to see that benefit and keep going. Yep. So people who learn how to talk about what's happening for them will more than likely continue to be good help seekers.
And that's my gut feel as well, and that's from my own experience as well. I feel like if you can, and I would imagine also that when you're helping people or supporting young people through, difficult things that they're going through, for a lot of the time, and again, I already said it, developmentally, young people may not necessarily be able to articulate them or have the words, choose the right words to actually explain sort of either what's going on or the way they're feeling. And I would imagine that is a crucial role of the counsellors at Kids Helpline to actually help them unpack what they can't unpack themselves.
Absolutely.
But then that's counselling to a T, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. You've got to learn how to do it. There's not many opportunities that we have within our day-to-day life to sit down and have a dedicated chat about ourselves.
That's why these podcasts are so good.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
This is like a dedicated conversation.
That's
so
it.
You really go,
We're chatting about this.
Different kind of conversation, but
But you got to practice it. And if you don't have the time, the space, or the permission to do it, then it's not something that people know how to do. And so sometimes our early conversations are just kind of giving people permission to feel what they're feeling and to unpack it and to go, let's talk about anything that's happening for you right now, and we'll figure out the bits that are most important for you to progress through, because it takes practice.
I think the other thing, the misconception is that people believe that when you reach out for assistance with the counsellor or a psychologist or whatever, that you're expecting them to just be like, this is what you need to go and do. Yeah. But it's actually, tell me I'm wrong here, but it's more than 90% of the time, it's more the person just getting directed along a line for them to figure it out themselves, but speak it out with someone, right?
That's it. A lot of people call us up, particularly when they're in their teens, and particularly if they're even younger than that as well, is young people are used to being told what to do. Mm-hmm. You go to school, you get told what to do. Your parents are telling you what to do. Your friends are dictating what's on the table, what's off the table. So there's very few opportunities in a young person's life to determine what's helpful for them or where they're going to have choices. And so sometimes we're having these conversations with young people about, I could tell you what to do, but I'm not living in your situation. So it would be a poorly judged decision. So let's unpack what's happening and talk through what feels right for you, what the options might be, and figure it out together.
It's a pretty empowering thing for a young person to figure out, because when they're like, oh, this is, I've got to get up at this time, I've got to go to school at this time, I've got to do this during the day, for them to understand, it's like, righto, well, you can also make decisions through there that are your own.
Completely.
And framing it that way. Probably not a lot of kids frame it that way.
No, and people call us up and say, yeah, cool, but what should I do? Give me some advice. And it makes sense why they're asking that. But we sort of ask to slow that down and go, well, let's talk about what's happening for you. Because without talking that through, any opinion offered by me wouldn't be helpful. Any advice isn't going to be helpful because I don't know your situation.
Yeah. Well, how often are you also getting people calling up being like, I don't know what I want to do? Like in that age bracket, it's so often. And it's the same thing with like what we had with the perinatal chat with Rani Farmer asking like young couples like, when are you having kids? When are you having kids? Same thing with like everyone does it. Like young people, it's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's such a fucking stupid question. But how often are people ringing up being like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, is there a lot of that? Sort of the lost, where's the direction I need to head?
Yeah, and often in regards to school, like we'll see that come up a couple of times a year. So usually at the beginning and the end. So people going into year 12, they're like, where are we heading? And people hitting the end of the year as well of what's next. But in general, should I move away from home? Should I move out? Should I take this job? Should I study this? And sometimes we talk through, and in a counselling interaction, we get, an answer that they're feeling comfortable with, or maybe a next step of, well, why don't you have a look into those different things and then see what you think, and then we'll come back and we'll keep chatting. Yeah. But sometimes as well, it's just going, well, it's okay not to know.
Yeah.
And you don't have to make that decision immediately, and just sort of slowing down this pressure.
Yeah.
And maybe unpacking where the pressure is coming from is, do you want to make the decision? Are you feeling the pressure from yourself, or is it coming from elsewhere?
Yeah, because you can't turn around and say, yes, you should move out.
Yeah,
100%. Yes, you should go and sign up for that degree.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And it's that, but I think people sometimes, particularly young people, they want someone else to make the decision because
then they don't have to own it.
Decision making,
they don't have to own it, right?
It's hard. It's big decisions too. Like, it's not easy. Like,
that's it. And we're like, look, if we could wave the magic wand and find the perfect decision, maybe we would, but this is going to take some work, and having things be unsure is a really uncomfortable place for people, but sometimes it's a necessary step.
And you will make the wrong decision. All the way through your life, you'll make wrong decisions, and you'll learn from them. That's the best way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And I mean, it gets me thinking in regards to like what the sort of questions we should be asking younger people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than,
Young people are so perceptive.
Yeah.
Like they hear everything. Like they'll hide around corners. They'll overhear conversations that you think they're not hearing.
Yeah, they got it.
They snoop through, drawers.
You have conversations around younger people. Like you talk to them.
Yeah.
And then you just talk as if you're saying things that they've got no idea what's going on. But you're right.
know.
They pick all that shit up.
Completely.
And they remember.
Yeah.
They remember too.
And you notice, particularly when we talk to kids, probably 10 and under, is you can tell what sort of influences are around them by the types of language that they're using and what they're talking about and the conversations that they've been a part of or have heard as well. And it's really interesting when we start to do some ongoing work with people, when we're lucky enough to, be invited into someone's life, every week to have a chat and a check-in, is you start to notice the things that they're paying attention to about how you're talking as well.
Yeah.
And these counsellor things tend to like sneak in.
But even like the other day, I was out at my sister-in-law's place, and she's got two boys, and we were coming home, we've been riding horses all afternoon.
Yeah.
Came back from the neighbour's place. Anyway, Marnie started playing some music on her phone, and Jack, he must only be grade 2 or 3, he's going, put some Metallica on. And I was like, and she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I love Metallica. And I turned around, I was like, you've got no idea what Metallica is. I was like, you've heard one song somewhere, and now you're a fan. Who listened to it? He's like, his other cousins have listened to Metallica. I was like, this is like a perfect example of like easy influence. I just heard one song. Now he's a massive Metallica fan. 100%. I was like, mate, firstly, you shouldn't be listening to that shit at this age. Yeah. Secondly, you've got no idea what they're talking about. There's no way you enjoy that music. You know what I mean?
But that's not what he's getting out of it. He's
seeing
a cousin who is seeing that he probably looks up to and thinks is cool.
I know.
He likes it, so I like it.
Yeah, but that's how easily susceptible young people are to these sorts of things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's so intriguing, and I mean, I'm looking forward to that one day when I have my own kids. Just, their little journey along the way. And because it must be so funny for parents to look back. And I'm sure, I have to ask my parents one day, like all the stupid shit that I was into, or like we were all into as kids, and being like, all the stages that you go through.
Absolutely.
Which is a great segue, because I want to go back to this identity piece.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's, like I said, it's a massive theme that continues to come up. And
Yeah.
the formative years, I mean, your formative years are really
They're still
right.
going.
I mean, you're
Yeah.
always.
I'm in the middle of my formative years.
You're always
How's it
still.
going?
Oh, mate. I'm trying to hydrate for
he
my
came
big
in-
week of form.
He came in last week dressed like an emo. He was like fully like he had the whole
I
blanket.
had it all happening.
Testing it out.
No, but sorry. The as you say, like you go through all the weird things you go through. You go through your cowboy phase. You go through your fairy phase. Like whatever the phase that you go through are. That's part of it. Like that.
Imaginary friends. I remember my sister had an imaginary friend for like 5 years.
Yeah.
But that's like you go through all these phases, and then you go through that, that 5 to 12-year-old period, and then you have to. Sorry, I went away from the mic. There was a bug. Then you have to, start to grapple with things like, physiologically developing, and it's different for girls as it is for boys, and all the things that come along with that.
Groups of friends.
Yeah, groups of friends, like
they're
the
into.
type of music that you're into, the type
Yeah.
of things that you do, the clothes that you wear, the way you look.
Yeah.
And this is an ever evolving thing. That for the record, I don't believe ever stops.
No.
Right? You sort of sharpen up a bit
Yeah.
as you get older, but
Yeah.
still you go through the same.
Completely.
But there's a real spotlight on it when you are young, when you're a kid, and it kind of breaks my heart a bit to imagine that there are young people who struggle with that stuff. But also there's that side of me that just wishes you could, to reassure these young people that that's okay. Like you're supposed to struggle with that identity stuff. You're supposed to be figuring out who you are. You have to try new things and you have to explore stuff because, otherwise
it doesn't end.
it doesn't. But when you're in it, it doesn't look like that.
I know, but
Yeah.
even like Lance at the moment, my wife, like she's talking about, what do I want to do, like right into the future, and it's sort of like, and putting all this pressure on herself. So I can't go and do this. I can't go and do that. Like I've been doing this for 10 years. I got to keep doing this. I'm like, why? Why do you have to keep doing that? I was
Completely.
like, fucking you can go do whatever you want. I was like, I've had more jobs than I can poke a fucking stick at. I enjoyed all of them for time, but
For a
I
time.
grew old of them and went and did something else. Like, I think there's a huge misconception of people, young people especially, go to university, spend all this money, have a fucking HECS debt, and they're like, I hate this job, but I've got to keep doing it because either mum or dad or my uncle or fucking grandparents were like, oh, you've done uni now, you got to keep doing it. It's like, no. Fuck all of that. Go and do whatever you want to do because you're going to learn more along the journey than slugging it out in some role or some job that you think needs to be.
But that's I guess part of the issue because all you can go off is what other people around you are doing, really. Do you know what I mean? Like that's one of the biggest things that people compare themselves to. And one thing that really stuck with me from way, way back early on when we started this thing, again, said it a few times from Southo, a mate of ours, down in Victoria, simple saying, adulthood is simply unfucking your childhood. And I feel like that's so true. Like I think I've said that to a couple people now and they kind of like, it is. You deal with so much and you absorb it all and you don't forget.
Yeah.
And so
I don't think you could have like the way that's said, like you can't not have a fucked up childhood. You know what I mean? Like everyone's got, most people have great childhoods, don't get me wrong, but there's still shit that you need to unfuck because it's never perfect. Yeah. And like mum always says, she's like, no parent ever gets a degree in parenting. It's just like, fuck, here's a kid, fucking don't kill
Figuring it out.
Good luck.
It's the world. You're set up for failure in that job because like,
there's no JD and KPIs for that bastard. It's not the coalition of truth and justice. I can fucking tell you now.
And so sort of to bring it back, like I just imagine that the work that you do and that Kids Helpline does is very much at the coalface of that. And it must just be so hard to not, obviously the empathy is there and you probably just want to help everyone and you can't hold everyone's hand.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Like, how do you what sort of person can do that job? Because I think I would be far too, it would be traumatic for me. I think I'd find myself too attached. I think, but maybe the training helps you otherwise.
I mean, I hope it does.
Yeah.
But I think what it really is about, and I think a lot of counsellors who work for our service would share this opinion, which is that the young people are actually doing the work for us, really, is we're just creating the space, creating the safety and allowing the time and opportunity to have that discussion.
Just let that little bit of trust, and they're probably just fucking.
And they're doing the hard work. They're the ones who are having to live in this situation and to navigate it. So if we can make one part of their day easier, one decision easier, or to allow them to feel supported and heard and validated, then that's all the work that we really need to see out of it. We do hear some stories that are pretty full on.
I could imagine.
But someone has to live it. So would I rather have to hear that story and be a part perhaps of supporting them, or for them to be dealing with it alone? It's kind of a toss-up in that way as well.
It's a good way to look at it.
A lot of the conversations, people who are asking for help because they need it and because they're ready to see something happen and to work with us to,
ready for a
to change something.
Yeah. What are you doing in situations, because I'm sure there would just be some horrendous stuff that comes through on that line.
Yeah.
What are you doing for those people where it's, where it's like a clear domestic violence or assault or something like that? What's the chain for there? Is it sort of like they've got to go to the cops, or do you?
It depends on the situation. So the service is, of course, underpinned by people need to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when we can work with someone to support them to be safe, we'll do whatever we need to do to work with them.
Yeah.
And the desire really is to work with someone, because if someone's sharing their story and you realise that they're unsafe, it's important for them to be involved in what comes next.
Okay.
When they can be, to go, well, how can we work together? What do we need to do?
So I'm sure there's like a major duty of care where it's like someone that's has expressed like there's something really bad going on at home or in an environment, and the person from Kids Helpline's like, right, well, there needs to be action taken here. Yeah. And the person's like, oh, fuck, no, you can't say anything. But, what's the process there? Because obviously it'd be very confronting for someone that's like, no, you can't do anything. Like, I'm just telling you this, but you can't do anything because, whatever. Yeah. What does happen there? Is it sort of like you reach out to corrective services or something like that, and you're like, what do we...
Yeah, so we do have a duty of care. That's exactly the term for it, which is as a professional service who are supporting young people and who have the stories of young people, is sometimes there are situations where we can't sit with that alone. Yeah. Where we've got to bring in services to support that. Our desire always is to ask the young people to come with us on that journey, to go, let's work together, let's figure out what the next steps are going to be and who needs to be involved.
Yeah. Geez, that must be, Well, what happens for the counsellors there? Because it's sort of like, when you're getting calls like that and it's so fucking hard and tragic, and I'm sure there's plenty of times too where someone's in the middle of like a really hardcore chat and the phone, they either hang up and disappear or something happens. Like, what's happening with the counsellors during those times afterwards to be like, fuck, right, you need assistance now because what you just dealt with was pretty hardcore? Yeah,
so we have really great lines of support. So counsellors have the support of supervisors who are in the centre with us, or are able to reach out and have a chat and unpack what's happened, and also be a part of deciding what to do next. Yeah, okay. Because, as I'm sure you guys know, in helping out mates or helping out at work, is sometimes situations happen, you're like, I'm not really sure what that next step is going to be, and that happens for us as well, to go, what do we need to do? Who needs to be involved? Because, phone lines drop out, people hang up, situations can get pretty hairy pretty quickly.
I could imagine.
When we're not in the same room as someone.
But I think that's also important to let everyone know is that, counsellors have their own support people as well. And those support people have other support people.
Absolutely.
It just goes around and around and around, which is, which is so important to know because everyone needs help.
Absolutely. And no one should have to sit in these spaces alone.
Yeah. What, because obviously it's for 5 to 25-year-olds.
Yeah.
What about parents who might have a child who they want to direct their child to Kids Helpline? Yeah. Can parents call in and have discussions about how to?
They can have, particularly if they just want to learn about the service, is they can give us a ring. We can have a chat. A lot of young people aren't that comfortable talking on the phone. Like, I used to work on the phone for a living, and even I tend to see if I can order something online rather than giving a restaurant a call. So I understand that the phone is not a super comfortable space for a lot of people, and particularly a lot of teenagers, and younger than that as well. So
need to get them on Snapchat.
Yeah. We'll have to take the counselling line over to Snapchat at some point, because it's not a comfortable space. Like, some people give their grandparents a call every couple of months, and that's their phone time. And as we said, there's great benefit to not being in the same room and not seeing someone, but that can also be a hard space if you're not super comfortable talking on the phone. So a lot of parents will call up and they'll have their young person with them. We'll do a little chat, we'll do a little, how are we going? Here's how it works. and then they'll hand that phone across.
Is that concerning to you that people aren't willing to actually have a voice conversation?
I think
that's how it's
interesting.
Yeah.
It is really interesting culturally that that's happening. Having said that, we still get hundreds of thousands of people calling us a year. So someone's willing to do it.
Hey, absolutely. But I find, like, even
the art of the conversation.
the art of the conversation. Like yesterday I went and had some wine and nibblies. My wife and I went and caught up with, she's like my adopted grandmother and auntie. And Josie's 93, deaf as a post, and you got to lean right in and yell at her for a conversation. But she was saying it to me. She's like, it's so sad now. She's like, because people, you go somewhere and everyone's on their phone. She's like, people don't sit and talk anymore. She's like, and I love doing this, and I love sitting here and talking. And I was like, me too. Like, and we chatted about how I was showing Dan before, she had a photo of an invitation she had to go and have lunch with the Queen in 1970, talking about that.
And the late Prince Philip.
And the late Prince Philip, yeah. But it was so interesting. And then talking about the Second World War. And I was like, when were you born, Josie? I was like, what year exactly was it? She's like, 28. And I was like, whoa. I was like, fuck. I was like, you were 17 or 18 when the Second World War ended. I was like, talk me through that. And she was like, it was petrifying. She was like, because she grew up out in Central West Queensland, and she was saying that the government were telling all the farmers in Australia, I didn't know this, all the farmers in Australia, that if the Japanese get into Australia, your job is to go out, bury all your food and shoot all your livestock. Because they didn't want the Japs to have all the food to be able to survive in the country. They wanted everything wiped out.
Yeah.
And she said they were just so petrified and that no one had a clue what was going on because obviously back in the day, news travelled so slowly.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of the guy, but he was like the head of the army said, no, we're not doing that. We're going to go into New Guinea and beat these guys. Like, we know how to, because obviously, like, the propaganda and stuff that were coming through Australia saying, like, if the Japanese get in here, like, they're savages, they're going to fucking kill everyone. It's like, what? Like, how, like, you're a 17-year-old person, hearing all this shit.
That.
I was like,
no,
fucking hell.
Did she call Kids Helpline?
Well, it's 1945. You're fucking a while off. Well, it didn't even have the old bloody wind-up phones back then. But what I took out of our bloody little Pinot last night with Josie, I was like, that's such a great conversation because we don't do that sort of stuff anymore and talk to older people about history because it's so important to get that stuff handed on.
Yeah,
and
everyone's got a story, and this is the thing that often when you're driving in a car with someone, that's why conversations come out. That's why you end up knowing a huge amount about the Uber driver.
Pull over. This conversation's too awkward. Let me out.
That's it.
Pull over.
We've got to make some eye contact.
I love a good Uber driver chat.
Yeah. And that's why, and particularly when we're talking with young people on the phone, is that they're physically in their comfortable space. So they're calling us from their bedroom, they're calling us from school, they're calling us from the library, they're calling us from a place that they've chosen to have this conversation. It's not like walking into a counsellor's office and being like, where am I? And what's
sit on the banana lounge, let's go.
Yeah. And so they're choosing that, and that often that leads them into conversations that have that depth. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's got important stuff to say.
Absolutely.
And we're just not taking enough time to find out.
So that kind of brings me to the next big hard-hitting question.
Okay.
In 30 years, obviously you've you've been with Kids Helpline for 4 years.
Yeah.
What gen does that make? What gen are you? Gen X?
Why? I'm millennial.
I can't keep up.
Millennial? I don't know.
And
what are you? So you're a 95 model, are you? 4. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever constitutes. I can't keep up with.
I don't know.
I'm not sure where we're up to.
We'd be in the same.
Yeah. Anyway, in 1991, 2021, 30 years. Wow. I mean, in 30 years, the social landscape has changed significantly, but it always has been changing from when, Josie was, obviously so young and lived through the Second World War. Change is always going to be happening, but we've obviously gone through a technological, massive technological change in that time. And everyone's always talking about what comes up a lot, like, I don't know how kids do it now, all the technology, like all the, all that sort of stuff. And what you're talking about with kids sitting on the phone, on their phones, not talking. So the art of the conversation has changed. It's just changed, the art of the conversation has gone more digital than face to face.
But more surface.
Yeah, surface level
Definitely
stuff.
surface.
But then obviously the one big one is the bullying and the stuff that comes through like online that kids have to deal with. And I mean, now everyone has to like have an iPad at school and or a computer or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I think back in the day, or even when I was a kid, you could, whatever was going on at school, you'd go home and you'd forget about it. Like that was it, and go out and kick the ball for the afternoon or whatever it is you'd do. But you could leave it at home.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to happen now. And so I'm interested to know, you know.
I don't think a lot of adults would understand that either.
I don't think
that'd be
No.
like a...
And they tell them just turn it off, just don't look at it. And that's really not an option if you want to be in the social.
Yeah. And so like, how does that general sort of, that world sort of come into what you do and see now?
I mean, cyberbullying, obviously, and people being unsafe online for a variety of reasons is something that influences a lot of our conversations. Having said that, social media can be a negative influence and it can really lead to a lot of distress for some people, but it's also a huge tool and a huge strength for a lot of people as well, because it means that they're constantly surrounded by supports as well. So their friends are accessible to them, and people are really good at asking for what they need and having conversations in that way. Social media is one of those things that I think gets sort of a surface level rap, which is like, oh, these kids are on their phones. They're not, what are they doing? But young people are really good at finding the things that are useful for them and using them in ways that serve them. So for the most part, we definitely have a lot more conversations about how they're having relationships online, how they're communicating online, the issues that might come up in that space as well. But I think more often than not, it can be a positive, but when it goes negative, it can be quite an unsafe space.
Oh, yeah.
And so because we won't have any kids listening to this, but we will definitely have a lot of parents.
Yeah.
And I know the conversation around social media, everyone's like, oh, it's so bad.
Tricky.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's obviously a superpower. It's grown, exponentially in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And with that, come any teething issues, like understanding how to correctly manage that or how to correctly channel the positivity,
Absolutely.
versus the negativity.
Yeah.
So what kind of things come up, and because I would imagine parents are like, fuck,
What do we do?
When do I give my kid a phone?
Oh, that was the question I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that look like?
Yeah.
Like there's how do you, traverse that line of, okay, I need my kid, I was going to say phone to have a kid.
Every phone needs a kid.
That's how you end up getting kids.
Yeah.
Tinder.
So you're traversing that line of, okay, I need my kid to be contactable
they need to be
by
safe.
me for their safety, but then
you give them access to this whole world. And I think it's one of those things, and obviously every parent and every young person will navigate it differently, but it's about boundaries, which is, in the face-to-face world, we're very aware of where our boundaries are, the things that people would say that we wouldn't sit well with, or the situations that we'd place ourselves in or remove ourselves from. And sometimes when you get in a social media environment or an online landscape, our boundaries aren't as clear. And it's about navigating that of what feels safe to you, what conversations are you comfortable with, what sort of language are you comfortable with, what spaces are you comfortable in. And if you become uncomfortable, what do you do? Where do you go? And who do you talk to? And it's just sort of that ripcord kind of thing of, if anything goes wrong, creating an environment where you can ask for help or go, I'm not so sure about this thing. Because we're not sure. It's growing faster than we are. So you can't really create a rule or a definite way of dealing with it.
And it's the kids or the people. I had to say, it's their bloody kids
the
doing
kids.
it. It's actually the users that are dictating where all of this stuff goes.
Yeah.
Like it is us. It's the consumers.
Completely.
It's like that. We are the product.
Yeah.
It's that. What was that thing?
If you don't pay for it,
social dilemma.
If you don't,
social dilemma.
Yeah,
like
if you don't pay for it, you're the product.
You're the product.
Yeah.
You are the product, and like you've got, the amount of stories that I've heard of like kids who have used their parents' phones and then bought like thousands of dollars worth of like tokens on like Fruit Ninja or whatever.
Candy Crush.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. Like $10,000 on Candy Crush. Like, bruh.
Jeez, would want to have been a good game.
What I reckon, and what it has come from social media. It was a TikTok hashtag that was happening. It was sort of like things your parents did or awesome things your parents did when you were growing up.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what the hashtag was. Definitely wasn't that long. But it was a young woman on there talking about how her mother had a pact with her that said, right, like you can call me fucking anytime, whenever.
Yeah.
And like, I can't remember what the code word was, but you just say whatever the code word is. You tell me where you are, I'll come get you, and I'll never ask you a fucking question about it. Like if you're in trouble, and she was saying how it was like at 2 parties, like some stuff was going on, like there was, and that happened. And she just said, I've been like forever grateful that like I had that level of trust with a parent where it was like, because I think that's like a majority of how people get into sticky situations is they're like, fuck, I'm in this situation now. If I tell anyone, like it's the you know, 2 bad situations. I can either say I'm going to get in trouble, or I can stay here and something else bad might, you know. So I was like, wow, and that's something that I will definitely do if I have
It's
kids.
like that Chris D'Elia thing as well, and you know you're talking about boundaries. But he's like, you know, when he grows up and his parent, like you got some parents who are like, don't ever do drugs, they will kill you if you do drugs. You know, I'll never talk to you again, and you're going to be in heaps of trouble. And so the kids are like, well, what's this about? You know? But then his parents were like, look,
here's the story.
We don't, you know, we don't want you to do anything dangerous. These things exist, but you know, we help you, support you through it. And he's kind of like, well,
so he's never drunk or done drugs in his life. Which is really, and actually, a funny thing about that is, I think I've already told you this, but the only other person I know whose parents did that, same thing. Same, like, it was like, oh, well, it doesn't interest me.
Yeah,
it's
like
sort of
you take all the power out of it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay. And I think there's so much in that where it's where parents put these fucking hard border lines up, these big walls being like, don't you fucking dare go and do that or be a part of that or hang out with that person. And they're like, okay. That's exactly like the Carl Barron thing. Is like, don't drop the eggs, fucking drop the eggs. You know what I mean? It's I think there's something empowering about that where it's, you're not trying to have that hierarchy of do this. It's sort of like, let's go on this journey together and trust each other. I think that's something that's so important for young people to be able to have those sorts of people in their lives with that sort of ability. And I thought that was an interesting thing. For her sharing that, I was like, fuck, that's cool.
That's it. And we have lots of conversations with young people about, you don't know exactly what to do in every situation. Things come up every day that, you know, you're in an environment where you don't feel safe, or you're talking with someone and you're not loving how it's making you feel, or you're processing something internally that you're like, I'm not sure how I'm going with this. And you don't have to know what to do all the time. That's totally fine. But what can be a good idea is to know, when I don't feel great, here's what I can do to look after myself, and here are the people I can go to. And then you pick one of those. Do you delve into your self-care and look at really just investing in yourself and creating that safety there, or do you go to someone else and ask for that support? And that sometimes is a good default plan to go, and then we can look at next steps. I don't need to know exactly what to do next, but I need to know that I'm safe and that I have support if I need it.
I think everyone needs that one person where it's like you can say pretty much anything, or let them know about pretty much anything, and it's just that support person where it's like, they're not going to fucking jam you about it. They're just going to help you out with it.
Well, like different people, like I've got different people for different things.
Different
issues.
You know
same thing. Same thing.
Like you don't have to just have the one. It can be like, and going through that is a healthy process as well. Like understanding who is good for what. Like, because there's obviously things that only my mother can help me with that like no one else could. But there's also definitely things that I just will not go near her for. No way.
Well, it's just, it's the same thing.
Like for her own protection. You know what I mean? Like for her own well-being.
Well, that's a funny, complex thing about it's your support networks, that you have to be able to have a few different people dotted around.
Definitely.
That's interesting. God.
Well, I think as I said, we don't have any kids listening to this podcast, so we're aware of.
There might be one. Shout out.
Someone's sneaking in.
Yeah, sneaking in as kids do. But I think it's quite beneficial for parents as well to understand what services are out there and how it works. And actually it's really beneficial for us. I mean, we operate our own support service with our charity TAX above us. And we're newbies. We are noobs.
We're fresh.
And it's good to know, get an understanding of, what's out there and, the types of issues that you guys deal with. And you want to be dynamic as well. You want to be able to hear, listen to the people. And the thing, like I've written down email chat. Like I'm going to go and chat. We're going to chat about email chat after this, because that could be a really beneficial way of, because I hate tech. Like I hate sitting on my phone.
It's not for everyone. That like instant.
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of scroll and, have a dumb scrolling session. But like,
back and forth.
Yeah, because
So the email chat thing could be very beneficial for people in our demographic, which would be interesting.
Because the email chat thing, that's on, is it? No, that's the feedback. Sorry, I was thinking about the other one because I did see it online. There was like email was an option because you could just have like a big contact us box and fill it all out.
Absolutely. And most people are going to seek the type of support that serves their need. And yes, there may not be a lot of kids listening, but I hope that there's some young people in that sort of upper, approaching that 20s and approaching that 25.
Definitely got some young apprentices for sure.
For sure. And that's a group that we're not seeing contacting enough, young men in particular.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that's what your old boy was saying is that you guys have got a big drive on at the moment to try and get more young males through this. So what I think we skipped over it before, but what was the breakdown of the demographic men, women age?
So your average Kids Helpline client is going to be a teenaged female.
Okay.
For the most part.
Yep.
We probably see female clients taking about the upper 60%.
Okay. I thought it would be higher than that.
So I think male clients are sitting about 20%-ish, and then we've got a gender diverse population as well that are seeking us out.
Okay, wow.
But for the most part, we see a lot of female clients contacting.
Yeah,
They're also more likely to contact ongoing.
Yep.
We tend to see male help seeking as a bit of a one and done. So it's sort of call up, have a chat, make a plan, see you later.
Yeah, catch you.
And then they'll come back like years later. Sometimes we're like, oh yeah, I talked to you when I was about 14. I'm 20 now. And we're like, all right, well, how's the last 6 years been?
Yeah. No, Wendy doesn't work here anymore.
Call number 2.
Yeah.
But and so I think.
No, Wendy doesn't. Shut up. What?
There probably is a Wendy.
I'm just trying. You know what I mean? Like calling back up, we're going to speak to Wendy again. It's like, nah, mate, she left here.
It does happen.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Just not Wendy.
That's why I said it.
I'm leaving.
That is interesting, yeah. And because they would obviously remember that. Like I called up about this 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. And we do have clients talking to us at points of crisis. And points of crisis meaning that they're unsafe from themselves or from other people, of course. But sometimes it's also just a panic and what do I do? And we pop up into their head. So we have people who have pulled over to the side of the road and just let's just have a chat, reach that sort of breaking point.
Yeah.
And I think whilst that's a really great time to have a conversation, really important time, is what would have happened if we talked to that person 3 weeks earlier when that breaking point was starting to build. And particularly if there are young males listening, and we want to hear from everyone, but young males in particular, it's really important to have those conversations and to start to have them early and to have them really intentionally. So
that's fantastic.
Well, a bit of a new thing that we've been preaching is particularly with TAX, our own sports service, but any service out there in general, is like just even if you're not at that crisis point, even if you're just thinking about, you know, and as you said again, if it's on your mind, it's important.
Yeah, give us a ring.
Which I believe is going to be the name of this podcast.
Great.
But
DK put that in.
have a call about just to find out who is on the other end and like what the start of a conversation sounds.
We've been pushing that heaps.
Yeah,
podcast
under the guise
of,
the guise of like asking for a mate. You know what I mean? Like
totally fine.
Easy done, because I've called. About a month ago, I called 3 services under the guise of asking for a mate because I wanted to know what that initial process is like.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fine, to be honest. I think a lot of people are concerned about clogging up the system, and I know you guys obviously you can't service all the calls, but a quick 5-minute chat, can really help down the track.
More than happy to do that. And we get phone calls from, people just going, what's the story? I'm wanting to support someone, or I just want to figure out if this is the right fit. And we'll spend as much time as we need to just having a chat. Here's how it works. Do you want to open up what's happening, or are you feeling like you want to come back another time? We get calls from entire classrooms. So, like, we get put on loudspeaker and the teacher's like, hi, this is year 3M.
That is great.
Hi. There's like 30 kids in the background.
They're all like, good morning,
like
Josie.
And they're like, who do you talk to? And they're like, wow. They're the best phone calls. But, if we can just help someone know that there is an option. We might not be the option right now. We might just be something sitting in the back of the mind. That's completely fine. And as we said before, unfortunately, we're not able to get to everyone at the moment. But a really important thing for people to know if they're calling up for help is if you stay on the line, a counsellor will answer.
Okay.
Sometimes it takes a while. and the hold music can get a little repetitive.
Just like bloody
yeah.
fucking Telstra.
Exactly. But the phone will always be answered.
Yeah,
Our system
yeah.
will never kick anyone out. If you stay, you throw that thing on loudspeaker, you go about whatever
Sit
you
and
got to
wait.
do,
Yeah.
and you wait for a voice to come in.
It's incredible. It's incredible, Josie. Well, we've definitely ticked over the hour 10 mark. So we are going to have to unfortunately wrap this up. But thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. How can
Great.
people get in contact with Kids Helpline?
Give us a ring, 1-800-55-1800. 24 hours, completely free, confidential, 5 to 25. If it's on your mind, it's important. Web chat and email you can access through kidshelpline.com.au.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it was great. There was some good stuff covered in there. I look forward to listening to this one back. And yeah, if we can be of any assistance with you guys as well, please reach out because we're all in this together. So
100%.
yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, team.
Thanks, Josie.
Thanks.
Oh, that was good.
We're being underwater with those things.
If I stop, I'll die.